This is my October wrap-up and I've been joined by my new friends. I tried to follow a spooky-ish theme this month and I think every book that I've read has had some part of it that was scary. Not in the traditional sense, but definitely in one way or another. The first book that I read this month was The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. Just wait for the monster to go past. This book was scary in the way that it is about a school teacher who manipulates a group of girls in her class that she wants to mould them into the shape that she wants. Not literally, but figuratively. The thing I liked best about this book was that it used prolepsis, which is when it flashes forwards to the characters' futures, and it does it in a really surprising way, just in the middle of a sentence, and somehow it still manages to keep you asking, how is this going to happen, even though you know what's going to happen to the characters in the end. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I do have a joint book review with another book that is kind of based off this one, so I'll link that one down below. The second book that I read this month was How to Be Both by Ali Smith. It does have kind of a ghost-ish element in there, but it's not scary. This book was nominated for the Man Booker Award this year, and it's really interesting because depending on which copy you pick up, you could either start with one character or another character, and the stories kind of intertwine in ways that you wouldn't expect. Their lives sort of parallel each other in numerous ways. It's really difficult to explain what it's actually about because it's more to do with the themes. A lot of philosophy going on in this book, lots of things to think about. I really enjoyed Francesco Del Cosa's part of the story more than George's part of the story, but overall I really enjoyed it and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I also did a review of this one, so I'll link that in the description as well. The third book I read was The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This is a collection of short stories that are, I don't want to say different version of fairy tales because Angela Carter has said that they're not a different version, they're just an exaggeration of the way that women are presented in those fairy tales especially. They're very dark, they're very rich in detail. I can understand why some people think that Angela Carter's writing is too detailed. I think the first story in this book, The Bloody Chamber, is actually the most descriptive and the most dense and the hardest to get into, I feel. So if I was recommending this book, I would say start with the second story and come back to the first one whenever you want. You don't really have to read them in order. You're finding the first story difficult to get into. The denseness of the description really matches the story, and it is toned down in the other stories. She just gets the tone of the story right every time, I feel, in her writing, so that was really good. This is definitely disturbing, really dark, very good for Halloween. Maybe wouldn't recommend it to a younger audience. There's a lot of very dark adult themes. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The fourth book I finished was The Shining by Stephen King. This was my first Stephen King novel and my first real horror genre book. This is basically the story of a small family who are asked to look after a hotel during the winter when there's nobody there anymore. There is a lot wrong with this hotel. It has a very dark history and obviously it has a lot of ghosts. I was expecting to be a lot more scared than I was. In the end, I found some of the parts that were supposed to be creepy or scary kind of silly, but I did really enjoy the level of character development and the way that the family dynamics were portrayed. I also thought that it was really interesting because instead of just a family of 2-dimensional characters going to a hotel and the hotel twisting them into something that they aren't, the hotel brought out characteristics of themselves that might have been coming out anyway. So it was really interesting to think about whether the events that happen in this book would have happened without all of the supernatural involvement. In the end, I gave this one 2.5 stars out of 5/3 stars because there could have been so much more creepiness happening. The fifth book that I read was A Monster Called by Patrick Ness. The original concept of this story was actually created by an author called Siobhan Dowd, who actually died of breast cancer in 2007 and was unable to write the actual book. Patrick Ness was asked to take over the story and keep it going, basically. I think that's a really important theme of the story, that stories, once they are out in the world, have the ability to change and transform and be passed on and passed down, and in that way I really feel like it mirrored a folk tale or a fairy tale or oral stories, oral tradition. This is basically the story of a young teenage boy who is dealing with having a mother who has a terminal illness and is going through treatments, and it's not looking too great. So the true scariness of this book isn't from the monster that is haunting Connor's nightmares. It's a book that deals with loss, so you kind of expect the same sort of advice. The main part of the story is really not predictable at all. It's a way of looking at it that isn't explored. It's the darker side of love and loss. I did cry when I read this book. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I might have a review of this up soon. I'm not sure whether I'll just do it on my blog. And the last book I read was I Was a Teenage Ghost Hunter by Brian K. Henry, who very kindly sent this to me in ebook form. This is a really fun Halloween ridiculous story. It's basically about a guy called Devin who is kind of dragged into all of these ghostly adventures with his friends because he has started seeing ghosts. His friends kind of take this and run with it. They want to solve the mystery of the old Rowston house. The story gets progressively more ridiculous, and the adventures that Devin and his best friends Rex and Clive get up to in the mansion house is just really funny. All the arguments that they have about how the best way to hunt ghosts is. The only problems with this book that I had was it felt polished in some ways, but in other ways it felt like it still needed some editing. The spelling and grammar was fine, it was perfect. There were just the odd sentences here and there that I just thought were superfluous. He would often show what was happening but then tell us again, and I just felt like those bits could have been cut out. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty fun read and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I'd recommend this to younger teenagers. It kind of reminded me of Supernatural, if any of you are a fan of that. If you know the ghost faces, it was kind of like reading about them as teenagers. So those are all of the scary books that I read this October. I also wanted to make this into a kind of favourites video as well, so I'm gonna talk about other things that I've really enjoyed this month. We'll probably have a Marvel section every month. I marathoned Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this month, and now I've caught up with season 1 and the first episode of season 2, which is where it's up to in the UK. So no spoilers in the comments about what happens after that point, please. Oh, I love the storyline and all of the things that go down after the mid-season finale. Just amazing. If you like Marvel, I definitely recommend it. The Avengers 2 trailer was also leaked this month and they blamed it on Hydra, which I thought was really funny. It looks so good, and the extended trailer is, they're having a nice little get together, and then Ultron has to spoil it all. My favourite film that I saw this month would probably have to be The Maze Runner. I think it's possibly the only film that I watched this month, but it was really good, and actually that's the scariest thing that I've seen/read all month. I haven't actually read the book. Oh, I know, shocking. I'm gonna admit, I really like Dylan O'Brien as an actor. I think he's amazing. So I went to see it for him, basically. Oh my goodness, I was not expecting the level of darkness in that film. And there were 2 kids under the age of 10 on the front row with their parents, and they were whimpering the whole way through and they really wanted to go out. And I'm like, why aren't you taking your children out of this film? I want to leave this film. It's terrifying, it's awful. If I'd seen that film when I was their age, I would have been distraught. I would have been absolutely terrified. I don't think I would have slept for about 2 weeks. I only watched Jumanji for the first time this year. I'm 21 years of age and I've only just seen Jumanji. So that's the end of the wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you've had a really good October. You're about to have a really good Halloween. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you next time. Bye!